Jim Winston here at DB Fine Wines, and we are going to have a very special tasting today. We're going to be looking at the wines from the Côte de Nuits in Burgundy. And Charles, the senior guy on staff, and I have just tasted through the flight. What we do when we pre-taste is we check to see if the bottles are sound. And I've already made this menu of what the wines are, and now we go through and I'll reset the order having tasted the wines, and sometimes we make some changes. Burgundy is perhaps, in fact, I won't even qualify it. Burgundy is the most difficult wine region in the world to navigate in terms of acquisition of wine. It's just a nightmare. Part of it is the fact that they produce very, very little anyway. Given the size of the section, the main section we call the Côte d'Or, which is comprised with the Côte de Nuits, which is what we're tasting today, and the Côte de Beaune. It's about the size of Napa Valley. But where Napa has vineyards on both sides, going up the slopes, plus on the bench, not so in Burgundy. It's basically one side of the slope facing east, that's it. So already, in terms of the size of the zone, we're not looking at a lot of wine. Then you have a situation where ownership of the vineyards is parceled out in a nightmarish way. It's almost a joke. You're lucky to have small rows within a vineyard. And what that has given rise to is, in terms of wine coming into the marketplace, it's either through a negociant, such as Drouhin or Louis Latour, or in some cases, well, Bouchard Perry-Fille, and we're tasting a Bouchard wine, or it's coming from a domain where the grower of that small parcel controls everything vine to wine what's in the glass. Now, it doesn't mean that that wines coming from a negociant aren't good. As a matter of fact, the one we're going to taste today is pretty goddamn good. But certainly, in terms of handicapping Burgundy, going with a domain is always a good swing. But within a vineyard, it's because of how inheritance laws work in France and so forth, you have this ownership that can be divided. And so in one case here we have Clos de Vougeot Grand Cru that we're going to be tasting. Art Dubois is the domain, but there are 80 owners in Grand Cru Clos de Vougeot. In some cases, you're going to have the entire vineyard owned by a single grower, and that is a rarity. It's called a monopole, and they're rarer than the stegosaurus teeth in your backyard. And we're going to be tasting a monopole today as well, which is Domaine Bretagne, and it's Vougeot. It's a Premier Cru, Clos de la Perrière, excuse me. So the flight is an interesting flight. We're going to be looking at Village, which would be the next level up from the base, which is just simple Bourgogne. And then we will be looking at two vineyards that are going to be named in the Village strata, and that's called a Lieu-dit. And then we will be looking at Premier Cru, and then we will be looking at two Grand Cru. And then, boom, 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 drum roll, we're going to be looking at something else that is quite rare. We're going to be looking at a white. Domaine Bretagne, Le Village is the Lieu-dit, and it is a white wine coming from the Côte de Nuits, which is very, very, very hard to find. When we think of great white wine Burgundy, which I love, we think Côte de Beaune. Rarely do we ever even think that they're producing Chardonnay in the Côte de Nuits. So that wine is something else. So we've tasted through the flight. We're going to be opening with we're going to try and get wines that are sort of going to be going trend from lighter. We'll finish with the Blanc, but we'll begin with a Maurice Saint Denis. Then we're going to go to a Côte de Nuits Village. And when you see Côte de Nuits Village without a specific village being designated, it means that this particular producer is sourcing fruit from 2 or 3 different villages. So that's why it just has a designation of Côte de Nuits Village. Marsanne will come up next, and this is one of the northernmost of the villages in the Côte de Nuits. Fissin is the other. Gevry-Chambertin, La Justice, that is a lieu dit. We will then go to a Chambon-Musigny. This is from Bouchard. We put this wine in our tasting flight for the Bastille Day tasting that we had last week. The wine is off the charts. It really is a great, great wine. It was so easy to say, oh, put that wine into this flight as well. Then we will do a Premier Cru. We'll move into the Premier Crus. We'll be looking at a Nuits Saint-Georges Premier Cru. And then follow it with the, what I mentioned before, we're going to be looking at the Monopole from Domaine Bretagne. Maurice Saint-Denis, an amazing Premier Cru comes up. And these wines were just like one after the next, are just these incredible things. The thing about Burgundy that you have to wrap around is these are not wines that have a great deal of what you'd call volume. So if you're thinking of big wines that you've enjoyed or enjoy and love those wines, when people get to Burgundy, one of the first things they think about is, oh, it's too thin. And it's Pinot Noir, it's too thin. And they've completely missed the boat, because what you love about great Burgundy, and these are great wines, is the complexity without that type of bulk. It's just haunting what they can, what these producers can make. Premier Cru Vogner Romanée, and then we close out with the Grand Cru Clos de Vougeot, and then a Grand Cru Clos Saint-Denis. Now this wine is one of those wines that is absolutely lights out in terms of the quality. I can't believe how great this wine is. However, having said that, this wine has complexity and a range of flavors that are not necessarily the simple things that we can, even for Burgundy, that we sort of light on, whether it be the brambly fruit and different things like that, and the forest floor, and you have those great mixtures, why the wines evolve in the glass, why they're so awesome to really savor. And this is a wine that is going to have two different aspects. That first scent, which has a lot of earthiness, a lot of different types of things going on that take you away just simply from fruit and floral, and then onto the palate itself, flavors just sort of like come out from behind that initial impression of that earthiness, and a silky, silky palate. It's a wonderful, wonderful wine. And then the surprise has to be this Blanc from Vougeot. Tiny portion of the village can produce Chardonnay, and something like this it's like having something from if you love white Burgundy from the Côte de Beaune, and if you love that richness of flavor and balance and wonderful flavors and that go on forever, wonderful lingering finish, but it has a delicacy given the attack of the wine. It's just an awesome expression of wonderful, wonderful white Burgundy. This is a hell of a flight. Cheers, folks.